Welcome, listeners, to my Nightvale theory. This is episode 2. If you missed episode 1, I would suggest that you go watch it first. To start off this episode, I will be going over some notes I received about my first episode. First thing I would like to share with you all is a theory on Big Rico's. Tim says, Big Rico's Pizza. You said you had no current ideas about it. Big Rico's would fit into your previously mentioned helicopter theory. Let me elaborate. A corrupt desert town off Route 800 might have its small local mafia, of which Big Rico is the head. It is clear in the cassette episode, along with Big Rico's commercial from station management, that Big Rico's is the only pizza place that was not burned down in an unsolved arson case. In addition, Big Rico's is a wheat and wheat byproduct speakeasy for a time. What else is made with wheat and its byproducts? Booze, anyone? Therefore, Big Rico's has a pizza place for a front, but they sell liquor without a license. The mandate to eat there once a week must mean that the sheriff's secret police know exactly what is in Big Rico's and have no intention of stopping it. I personally think it's a brilliant fit and would like to thank Tim for his theory. The next thing I'm going to cover is Steve's question on the comparative timeline between IN and ON. Before your question, Steve, I hadn't given much thought to the timing of the show, so I did my best to make something logical and concrete to base our time off of, but a timeline is difficult to place on two separate time streams, especially when the rate of time in Nightvale fluctuates. We do know the first episode aired on June 15th, 2012, and I will use this as a marker for when Cecil was initially shot, and response time for ambulances in the US ranged between 8 to 15 minutes. If you double this time and add a 10-minute buffer to get Cecil set up and safe, for him to say, "The dog park will not harm you," and that took, in Nightvale, 1 minute and 25 seconds. The next thing he mentions is a visit from Old Woman Josie, ON, so we must assume that Cecil fully lost consciousness, and so the time IN will be shorter than ON, as any loss of consciousness ON causes no pause in Nightvale. However, we do get some points of reference to the real-world times, such as Valentine's Day, the arrival of a single regular doctor, who would be Carlos, at approximately a day. We can match the surgery to the lights above the Arby's, and we know 1 year later was 1 year ON as well. Thank you to Tim and Steve. Now on to the theories for episode 2, The Glow Cloud. We open this episode with a message from the tourism board of Nightvale, inviting us to visit Radon Canyon. Cecil has so far only been visited by Old Woman Josie, ON, and is lonely in the hospital. He is hoping for someone else to visit him. Being in a hospital, he sees biohazard signs around him, and that many visitors for other patients need face masks. Thus the highly toxic Radon Canyon and the need for rebreathers when he's describing the place he would like people to visit him in. The next segment is about John Peters, the farmer, and how there's a glowing cloud rolling in from the west. The glow cloud is an emergency drill in hospitals. The key points that led me to believe this were firstly the changing colors of the glow cloud, because there are many colored drills in hospitals, such as red for fire, purple for an abduction, yellow for a missing patient, or the one we first see in the episode, orange, for external disaster, which is the one that would resonate strongly with Cecil before figuring out what the actual problem was, as any problem in the hospital would be considered an external disaster from IN. Secondly, is the fact that it possesses the inhabitants of Nightvale. Since all of the hospital staff would have very specific and predefined responsibilities during an emergency, they would appear to have a hive mind when the alarm is on. At the end of the episode, Cecil tells us that he tried to play back the tapes, but they're all blank and smell faintly of vanilla. Hospitals began using scents to make the setting more relaxing, beginning in 2007. The list of used scents includes lavender and vanilla. However, strong artificial scents can cause negative reactions in people, especially when they are already sick. It's also worth mentioning that the glow cloud began over Old Nightvale, which, if the problem resulted from overuse of a scent, the old people in the hospital would have weaker lungs and a greater chance of being there for a lung problem, and would be the first to react to the odor. This is why the glow cloud is both an airborne phenomena and why it drops dead bodies as it moves over Nightvale. The vanilla scent that ON Nightvale Hospital has begun implementing is killing its patients. Cecil also mentions that the sheriff's secret police say, If we had to shut down the town for every mysterious event that at least one death could be attributed to, we'd never have time to do anything, right? Which I take as affirmation that Cecil is in a hospital where many people die on a regular basis, and death is handled with a professional detachment. The doctors and nurses must move on to help the next patient. The Apache tracker, and I remind you that this is the white guy who wears the huge and cartoonishly inaccurate Indian headdress, has announced that he has found some disturbing evidence concerning the recent incident at the Nightvale post office, which has been sealed by the city council since the great screaming that was heard from it a few weeks ago. As mentioned in the previous episode, the Apache tracker would appear to be a faith healer. I take the post office and letters that are thrown around to be messages, likely divine messages from some deity which Cecil does not want to hear, because he does not believe a miracle will heal him. So, as his mouth is still fully functional, he screams and throws a fuss at the Apache tracker, thus the great scream. The more to come, and soon, does not mean deaths, as was implied, rather more messages, which Cecil does not want to hear. Now for everyone's favorite venomous feline, Koshek. Koshek is a motivational cat poster in the men's washroom, which reads a message similar to, "You're perfect," thus reminding Cecil of how broken he is. This inspires his line about how no pet is perfect. They become perfect when you learn to accept them for what they are. This also shows that Cecil knows he will have to eventually accept what has happened to him, but he's not ready to do so yet. The next segment of the episode was an ad from Cecil's sponsors. I took a walk on the cool sand dunes, brittle grass overgrown, and above me in the night sky, above me I saw bitter taste of unripe peaches and a smell I could not place, nor could I escape. I remembered other times that I could not escape. I remembered other smells. The moon slunk like a wounded animal. The world spun like it had lost control. Concentrate only on breathing and let go of ideas you had about nutrition and alarm clocks. I took a walk on the cool sand dunes, brittle grass overgrown, and above me in the night sky, above me I saw. This message was brought to you by Coca-Cola. In this ad, Cecil is describing the shooting. I haven't figured out the cold sand dunes, but Cecil mentions the taste of peaches during the time he was shot, and a search on Amazon revealed a book called Fresh Peaches, Fireworks, and Guns by Donald Platt. Here is a description of the book. Language, not geography, is where we live, says the insomniac poet at 4 a.m., flipping through all the different stations, grand opera, pop, and punk rock, on his radio. In the listening area that is his first collection of poems, Donald Platt tunes in on the dissonance of his own and others' lives, whatever their occasions, stopping at a roadside fruit stand in Georgia, a retarded brother learning to speak, childhood on a Midwestern farm, a grandmother's quilts, thumbing through the Gilding Bible in a cheap motel, the long algebraic equation of springtime in Virginia. These poems possess, as Mark Runneman has observed, an inevitable roughness of language, which captures the abrasiveness of the world as it impinges and presses down on consciousness. The peaches and guns that Cecil relates to his first entering Nightvale is giving reference to a book. This book appears to focus on language, late nights, radio in particular, the dissonance of life and the harshness of the world, and pressing down on consciousness. These things are all found in plenty within Nightvale, and the last two are specifically about how Cecil has suppressed his conscious mind to hide from the harsh reality of the world. Cecil is unable to escape as he wanted to, as he has already been shot. The moon slunk like a wounded animal is relevant because it fills the same role as a dark planet lit by no sun, which in later episodes is used to symbolize death. And this shows that Cecil has been wounded. He then proceeds to watch the world spin around him as he tries desperately to remain conscious and focus on continuing to breathe. Cecil links this event to Coca-Cola because, in the panic of a shooting, a bottle of Coke fell on the ground and rolled in front of Cecil before he passed out. The City Council, in cooperation with government agents from a vague yet menacing agency, is asking all citizens to stop by the Nightvale Elementary School Gymnasium tonight at 7 for a brief questionnaire about mysterious sights that definitely no one saw, and strange thoughts that in no way occurred to anyone, because all of us are normal, and to be otherwise would make us outcasts from our own community. We see throughout the show that Cecil is a dorky character who is quite sensitive, is attracted to men, prefers words to actions, and would regularly hide from the biker gangs that came through his town. Given the attitude we have seen about his hometown, ON, it is likely Cecil would have been bullied as a child. He most likely sees being paralyzed as another reason people would mock him, so he remembers his school life and how he tried so hard to fit in and be normal because he was made to feel like an outcast for his differences. We also see how Cecil dealt with the pain and sadness in his life, and it would be consistent with the character we have, who hides from the world in a fantasy land within his own head. We see this when he says, "Remember, if you see something, say nothing, and drink to forget." This gives additional support to my overall theory that all of Nightvale is Cecil's delusion. We are then given a list of positions in the Nightvale Boy Scouts, which are as follows: Cub, Boy, Eagle, Blood, Weird, Dread, Dark, Fear, and Eternal. Now, continuing on the theme of Cecil's rough childhood, his mother noticed that Cecil was picked on and presumably funless in school. Rather than talking with Cecil about what would help him, she decided that he would benefit from a group of accepting peers who would teach him skills and social graces to help him fit in throughout his life. In short, she signed him out for Boy Scouts against his wishes. If you notice, the positions in the list begin normally. However, the older boys within the Scouts, specifically starting at Dreadnought, are frightful names. That is because the older boys are the same ones who bullied Cecil in school. Cecil was afraid of the people in the higher levels of Scouts, and so Cecil gives the older Scouts darker names. I'm not certain on the Eternal Scouts yet. The scarlet letter that was used to signify that your son has been selected holds significance as well. The scarlet letter is a book. Within this book, there is a scarlet letter A that is worn to signify the sin of adultery. We already know that Cecil's ON hometown is not very accepting of different sexualities. Cecil feels he's being punished for being sinful by his mother, sending him to Boy Scouts to face his bullies even when he's not in school. We now come to Hiram McDaniels. I do have a theory I believe to be a wonderful explanation of who, or rather whom, he is. However, it does contain some major spoilers for further episodes. You have been warned. Hiram is 5 children. They are brothers, potentially quintuplets, but not necessarily, as long as they look very similar. They are the grand or great-grandchildren of the faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home. This is the reason why they say she is beautiful, and why they tried to take over Nightvale with her. The golden child is the ringleader of the mischievous children, and has even gotten hold of a fake ID, which he proudly tells his grandmother about when they visit her. His ID is for Frank Chen. When they enter the room with Cecil and the faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home, they are very loud, very chaotic, and take up most of the room. Because of this, and the fact that Cecil sees McDaniel's children as a single entity, Hiram takes on the form of a rogue 5-headed dragon, IN. Next is the community calendar. The hospital that Cecil is staying at hosts many events each week. I don't have any ideas for what the library being unknowable is, but Sunday would seem to be a garage sale of sorts for the hospital. They would mark items with either blue or red stickers, red for staying and blue for being sold. The hospital I volunteered at hosted many music lessons for patients in continuous complex care, thus Louis Blasco's bluegrass lessons on Monday. Tuesday was both a bake sale and a blood donation day, so Cecil combined these for a bake sale for a blood space war. The activity on Wednesday was cancelled rather than the day, and Thursday was a free concert, just like it said. We have now reached the part of the episode where the weather is played. In case you missed it, the weather was explained in the first video of my theory. After the weather of this episode, Cecil is unable to remember a chunk of time prior to the weather. This is because during the weather of this episode, the vanilla scent had begun to make Cecil have difficulty breathing. Therefore, when he did his check of the environment, he found something was wrong and began to cough and attempt to keep himself alive. Therefore, all of Cecil's attention was taken from Nightvale, and he managed to forget a portion of his story in all the chaos around him. Thus, he couldn't remember earlier in the show. The next thing Cecil says to us is, "I'm going to get a little personal here. That's the essence of life, isn't it? Sometimes you go through things that seem huge at the time, like a mysterious glowing cloud devouring your entire community. While they're happening, they feel like the only thing that matters, and you can hardly imagine that there's a world out there that might have anything else going on. And then, the glow cloud moves on, and you move on, and the event is behind you. And you may find that, as time passes, you remember it less and less, or absolutely not at all in my case, and you are left with nothing but a powerful wonder at the fleeting nature of even the most important things in life, and the faint but pretty smell of vanilla. This line is a reflection by Cecil on his most recent near-death experience and how its panic had completely broken him from Nightvale, but how from IN he can't remember or even imagine that there is an ON. He also expressed how he hopes to get past his need for Nightvale and how he does not want to remember his past before Nightvale, and so doesn't remember it. The list at the end of the episode can be interpreted so many ways. I don't believe I would be able to find one that would completely satisfy me. So I would like to ask that you, the listeners, give me your ideas on the list in the comments below. I will start off our list of the list with the idea that this is exactly what Cecil says it is, a list of things. Specifically, things that Cecil thought about as his life flashed before his eyes during the weather. Emotions you don't understand upon viewing a sunset. Lost pets, found. Lost pets, unfound. A secret lost pet city on the moon. Trees that see. Restaurants that hear. A void that thinks. A face half seen just before falling asleep. Trembling hands reaching for desperately needed items. Sandwiches. Silence when there should be noise. Noise when there should be silence. Nothing when you want something. Something when you thought there was nothing. Clear plastic binder sheets. Scented dryer sheets. Rain coming down in sheets. Night, rest, sleep, end. Good night, listeners. Good night.